This is the Epiphone Seville Auditorium number 4, a 1930, as the interwebs has told me. You might think from the color that it's a number 2. It's a number 4. And this started it all for Epiphone New York. When I first got this guitar, my friend brought it over and threw it on my couch and said, "You should check this thing out." And I was kind of like, I don't really feel like it. It didn't scream to me. And I think that was because I was distracted by a bunch of other guitars that I knew about, that I actually wanted. And had I understood the history of this guitar, I would have known that this is one of my dream guitars. But it came to me serendipitously, which is a huge thing that I always explain to everybody that watches these shows. How do you get all these crazy expensive guitars, rare guitars, cool guitars? It's because the universe brings them to me. I don't go, hey, I want to buy a Black Beauty, which is a guitar that every single person wants, and they all type it into Reverb and eBay, and they go for crazy amounts of money. I say, hey, universe, bring me something crazy. And the universe goes, here's a 1930 Epiphone special number 4, or Seville number 4 auditorium size. And I go, that doesn't look that cool. And basically the universe says, but is it? And the answer is yes. This is one of the coolest guitars, shrouded in mystery and the beginning of a company. So the first thing we'll look at here is this headstock. This headstock is the Nostradamus of Epiphone, because Epiphone's now coming out with new headstocks in all their guitars. Look a little bit the same. I had somebody in a group tell me, well, they had never seen this headstock on an Epiphone in real life, and that's because most people haven't. Wicked rare. So let me tell you what this is. This guitar is so rare that when George Gruen, who, if you didn't know, was kind of like Papa Bear of collecting, he has Gruen's guitars in Tennessee, wrote a book about collecting. On page 156, he refers to the number series because Epiphone didn't know that this was called the Seville until a few years ago when one collector said, hey, I have an advertisement that was an insert in like a 1930s magazine, which had all the different versions of this guitar. And basically the way it went was you can order this guitar between 0 and 4, and depending on how high the number was, 0 being entry level and 4 being the highest, they would put more accoutrement on it for you. The wild and zany stuff like, these crazy inlays and this insane bridge, and you can order it in, I think, 13 inches and 15 inches. This is the auditorium size. And for a 1930 guitar, this is probably the biggest jumbo crazy thing I've seen. And it was like steamed or called pressed, like some sort of hybrid technology at the time that we now just know as like laminating and arching and blah, 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 blah. But at the time that this was revolutionary, Epiphone started as a banjo company. So their first guitars ever were the Recording King, which you basically, there's been a bunch of different models that have come out. But the original ones had these crazy inlaid headstocks, and they were rated between A and E. So whether you got a Recording King A, a Recording King D, D just meant it had a bigger dick, because they put more stuff on it. It had these insane inlays, and some of them even had these insane bridges. This guitar is so rare, and I say that because I looked at the original records, and there's only 6 known ever made. This is the second to last. This was made in 1930. I believe the second guitar known ever on record made by Epiphone was an Epiphone Seville number 4, much like this. Now, if you go online, number 407, and this is 420. This is 420, okay? This is the 420th guitar Epiphone New York ever made. Very peculiar, because it was 12 frets to the body, which everyone knows most guitars before 1930 were 12 frets to the body. Technically, the HG24 from Gibson or the O21S from Martin, L5s were doing 14 frets before this. But for dreadnoughts, those were the first. I believe that this is the first dreadnought from Epiphone, and maybe one of the first ever to have 14 frets to the body. instead of having 19 frets, it has, instead of having 18 frets, it has 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. It's 20 frets. Instead of 19, it has 20 frets. And it has 14 frets to the body. But what's so interesting is, if you go online and look at the one that's in the Archtop Museum, which is the special number 4, it's number 407 versus 420, 12 frets to the body. So between 407 and 420, 13 guitars, we got 2 frets to the body, which is huge. Basically, there's a whole school of, I want 12 frets to the body, and there's a whole school, and this is the entire modern school of guitars, 14 frets to the body. So not only is this one of the first guitars ever to come out of Epiphone, this may be the first 14 fret to the body acoustic dreadnought that Epiphone ever made. And this is the Auditorium size. This is the 15.5 inch, which is a wildly huge size. I mean, this looks like a giant guitar in the first place, but in 1930, this was not how guitars looked. Guitars were small. Guitars were primarily made for women. Like, this is the 021. This was a pretty standard sized guitar. So as you can see, you show up with this, and then someone goes, hey man, I want to be heard in the orchestra. But something that's also just fantastic about this guitar is, I've looked them up online, and I have yet to find one that's all original. I believe, other than maybe the frets, okay, because it plays pretty freaking amazing. This thing's all original, which is wild, because I don't think, not even the one in the Archtop Museum is all original. It's all refinished. They didn't know the one that they had was, if this was even an original bridge, but as I've seen from some of the early recording kings and from the other ones I found, this is a stock bridge. And it's crazy because from this piece of Brazilian rosewood is this floating saddle. And when I had taken this off originally, it fell out. And I'm like, whoa, is it broken? And I thought that it was actually like cracked, not dissimilar to the 1902 0042 prototype Martin that I've posted. It had a floating saddle. That was a thing back then. And it perfectly goes into this rosewood. That's just wild. I mean, the look of it is just wild. And if you look at the back of it, this is the kind of aging I want to see on a neck. But these appear to be the original tuners. And I gotta tell you, with a little bit of oil, they move great. And these buttons, I am 95% sure they're original. I can tell you the tuners definitely are. But these buttons are just in fantastic condition. But I also just love this headstock. This headstock is so regal. And it basically becomes what Epiphone, all these overseas Epiphones have echoed over the years, as far as like, oh, we want to look like we have quality. It's just copying what they did in 1930. First off, it plays absolutely amazing. I mean, from top to bottom, it's just absolutely fantastic. But it sounds so beautiful, and it's got a huge tone. I mean, a lot of these guitars, obviously over time, as you can see how much mojo, it breaking up, the glue breaking up, the cracks, all the dings, all the dangs, make it louder, turn these things into cannons. But when you get a guitar of this age, again, 1930s, so you're talking over 90 years old, very rarely did they sound like something you could use as an everyday strummer. But if I want to, it's got this crazy crisp presence high end. And one of the things I talk about on this show about guitars with that presence, I love bass in a guitar. But when you're playing acoustics and you're recording as an engineer, a lot of that bass gets taken out. And it's not to say that it's not a good thing, but a guitar that has like a nice mid section to that crispy high, that's what's really going to sit over a dense mix. So there are some guitars that sound great, as in they fill up the room, they have awesome bass and all that. And this guitar has that, but it also has those frequencies that I immediately hear as an engineer and go, ooh, that's going to cut your eardrum, and that's going to go right through a mix. So if I have, you know, a 10-piece drum kit, shredding metal, and, you know, synthesizers, you'll still hear this acoustic guitar. I mean, it's just great sounding. I mean, guys, how much better do you want it to sound than that? I mean, one of the things, if I've learned anything from John Mayer, you got to pick up a guitar and let it inspire you and just decide, are there songs in it? And they're just infinite songs, because the first thing I want to bring to your attention is that the action on this is dead on, balls, nuts, awesome. So from the first fret all the way up to number 20. And if you play a chord right up here, and then you go up here, that's one of those things that if you really want to challenge, like these old acoustics especially, and also a sign that maybe it did have the frets redone because, you know, they're not burnt to shit. But something that I like is, again, does it sound as good down here as it does up here? Because, you know, you can always play, right? But it's still in tune and intonated. I mean, that's pretty amazing, guys. You can do all those open voicings and it just sounds amazing. And I've said this again in other videos, but doing that kind of like crazy train, Jack and Diane inversion thing in A, where you go, it's a good way to hear the overtones of the guitar, make sure everything's intonated. And you can do those Randy Rhoads inversions where you add the pinky. That's kind of how you know. That's one of those things that really, for me, separates good guitars from just like excellent guitars and things that you can do in the studio, is the ability to not have to tune things. One thing with a lot of old guitars is you do actually have to tune them to the chord, because it's just hard to keep a guitar perfectly intonated. And so to have something that can go, this is a strummer, guys. I mean, I could play Metallica. It's the Epiphone Seville Auditorium number 4. This is the guitar I never knew that I wanted, but I've been dreaming of.
Why don't you smash that subscribe button already?